Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second AMA. We will give it a few minutes to let people join, and then we'll get into some of the questions we didn't answer last time about the species. And basically, what I'm going to do is go through all of the species that we've got in Oscana. All of these will be coming out in our source book from the Kickstarter that's launching in December. We've also got some quite exciting news, which I will get into very shortly. And yeah, I have been at London Comic Con all morning, so I am very tired, but had an excellent time. Saw some incredible costumes. People put in such amazing effort into them. They're great. Um, and also, we've got Evan with us, who's going to mainly be the silent partner for this AMA, but he will be showing some of the art for the species as I talk. And he'll also be showing the art for the surprise that we've got, which one of those pieces is behind me at the moment. So probably give it another 2-3 minutes and then we will get going. Excuse me. One of the cool things since the last AMA was we've had quite a few views on our YouTube, Facebook, and some very positive, quite nice comments. So thank you for those. We are hoping that these are going to be every 2 weeks from now. We have the very talented Katie, who is kind of managing it all behind the scenes for us. And that is all going well. I can see everything, which is always a positive thing. Right, so I might as well start with our surprise. So we have been very lucky at Gold Mountain Games to be working with the incredibly talented Chris McCauley. If you don't know him, he has been given the title of Master of Horror. And he also writes the Stokerverse, and he's involved in a lot of the Doctor Who stuff. So it's been really cool to be able to work with such a talented writer. So what he's done is he's written a one shot for us. We've got Chris McCauley, as I said, as the main writer, and then one of our writers, Nell Quinn Gibney, has also been working on it. We've got art from Evan, all of the graphic design and maps done by our graphic design lead, Katie. And what we're going to do is be offering that out for free to you guys. So there should be a QR code here, I believe. And there's also a link next to it that will send you to, if you sign up to our mailing list, you will be emailed that one shot. What I'll do is at the end of this AMA, I'll be talking a bit more about it and kind of going into some of the process of writing it. But as I said, this is the front cover behind me. But we thought it was the right time for Halloween to give you something a bit spooky. And it's our first outing of our setting to you guys, so we're really excited to offer that. So Before I go into the species, we've got a question that was posted by Chris N after last AMA, which was so just finished rewatching the AMA, and thank you for taking my questions. Not an AMA question, but kinda. What is the best way to support your project, Patreon or Kickstarter? Looking forward to the next AMA and the stream. So those are both good ways to support us. The Patreon is full of really great stuff. We've got several tiers, starting out at £1, which is about $1.50, I believe. And oh, here we go. Here's Evan bringing some art for you.
Sorry, everybody had a little technical difficulty there, but I'll just lag behind Rob for a little bit for the duration of the meeting.
That's fine. Thanks, Evan. So yeah, the Patreon is a great way to support us. It gives us as a company some regular income, which all goes back into paying the artists and writers, etc. And as I said, we've got quite a lot of things on there. We've got free comic book. We've got a few free maps. There's a free newspaper article, and then as you move up the tiers, you get access to more. So our highest tier has behind the scenes stuff, some draw alongs with Evan. We've got, I think it's 3 maps a month. We've got a monster, a spell, an item, and the whole newspaper. And as you go down the tiers, you get a selection of those things. But we've built up quite a lot on there now, so please do go and have a look. It is Gold Mountain Games. Our Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are all other ways to kind of support us and follow us there. And obviously the big one is the Kickstarter, which is coming out in December. And of course, if you sign up to this mailing list to get the one shot, you'll be notified of all of this stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for that question, Chris.
Yeah, sign up. You'll get a lot of cool behind the scenes artwork. You'll get to actually chat with us as we, spitball ideas, see how some of these things come together. Right now on screen is really just a time lapse behind the planning process visually for the cover for this one shot. But in joining the Patreon, you get an opportunity to really dig into behind the scenes, a lot of the thinking, a lot of the design input that went into the final iteration, which this will eventually get to. So there's a lot more meaty content there to dig into if that's of interest to you, especially if you're an aspiring artist yourself, or if homebrewing your own content is something that you do frequently and you want to see how a world like this can come together, or how a team like this can work together to bring something like this to life.
Absolutely. So let's go to one of the questions that we didn't have time to answer last time. And this is kind of the basis for a lot of this AMA. If you do have questions while we're talking, please post them. You can post them to our Facebook under any of the live streams, and they will be sent directly to me, and we will deal with them as we go. So the question was, how did you approach your races? So I think the first and most important thing there is that we've made the decision to not call them races. We are calling them species. This was something that we felt quite strongly about because they are species. They are completely separate. I'm going to repeat the word species here, but they are completely separate species to each other. And so their various traits, abilities, and skills are unique to them. And it doesn't pigeonhole them as much if you if you don't call them races. And one of the things we're very keen on at Gold Mountain Games is to be as inclusive as we can be. So that's you know, that is quite an important thing for us. Then one of the things I've always loved in any kind of fantasy setting is the greenskins. I love orcs, I love goblins, I love trolls, all of them. I think they're really fascinating. Like from, you know, you take the Tolkienian orcs and they are corrupted elves. And that kind of, you know, obviously that was their start. And they came from this place of that they didn't have culture because they were an army. And then you see them over the years progressing through these stages of becoming a more complete people. And I think that's something I really wanted to push. I wanted to make them part of this setting, not monsters that kind of lurked in the shadows and raided and all of that. They are fully a part of Askana. And you know, I felt the same with the goblins, and I thought there's enough there to draw upon that we don't have to lose that core kind of concept of, you know, orcs they have that kind of martial and militaristic aspect to their cultures. Yeah, just like if you look at the Klingons from Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
But for so long it's been written as a negative, and that's something I really wanted to pull away from. And we'll get more into that as we go through the species. But something that kind of overarching on this island of Askana is that the gods that are influencing these the different playable species are good. They have virtues, and they try and instill these in their followers. So there's this whole aspect of all of these species coming together and working together for the betterment of the entire island. And so I wanted all of the different playable species to fit into that role, and not have these guys are good, these guys are bad, these guys only do this. So all of the species have a fully invested culture in all of the other cultures. And I think we've achieved it really well. I think we've kept, you know, our dwarves are still dwarves. You will recognize them as dwarves, but they have uniqueness to them. And Evan is reminding me there by flashing up the trolls.
In no particular order.
As the dwarf is up now, let's talk about that quickly. One of the things I really wanted to do as well was, this is an evolved land. So although we have beings that are worshipped as gods, they did not create the world. They did not create the species. And so I was really looking at how their environments and that process of evolution would affect what they ended up looking like. And the dwarves are a great example of that. Dwarves are famous for their massive beards. Now, why would dwarves have beards? Well, they work underground in dusty, you know, not very nice atmospheres. So their beards are there to filter out all of that dust so they're not swallowing it all. And that got me thinking, well, that wouldn't be different for the female dwarves. So, as you can see on screen now, this is Evan's work of drawing a female dwarf. And I think, Evan, you were talking to me about the interesting challenges that poses with the, in our culture, beards are a very masculine thing. So you were having to get in other feminine qualities, but also making them unique in their own right.
Yeah, absolutely. And not lean so heavily into those feminine qualities so as to like arbitrarily sexualize them,
Mm.
or this isn't about making an effeminate character. It's making a character that reads as feminine, or reads as a woman, but also has a beard. So it's a really tricky line to toe, especially from a visual design standpoint, because there's a lot of subtlety there. And normally visual design thrives on exaggeration or really pushing the envelope, and that subtlety aspect is really where things can get challenging. But it was a super fun challenge, and it's been really exciting to see how the dwarves develop, how the female dwarves in particular develop, and how we're able to integrate things that I think make the world and characters and species feel more realized and more, I don't want to say grounded necessarily, but more living and breathing rather than
Yeah.
just icons of archetypes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I, again, I like about the team we've got is when we pose those kind of challenges, we relish them, and we're very keen on this idea of inclusivity. Like I really wanted to be able to have a non-binary dwarf if we wanted one, and that becomes very difficult if all male dwarfs have a beard. So I think it was a really, again, an interesting challenge to be posed, but I'm very pleased with the outcome of it, and I think we've managed it well. Oh,
Absolutely. And think of the storytelling options it opens up for you. I mean, if you do have a female dwarf without a beard, well, what does that mean? Did she shave her beard to better fit in with non-dwarves, with outsiders?
yeah,
Or if you have a male dwarf without a beard, is that a male dwarf who is trying to read as non-binary? And then it gets more complicated because the beard isn't really the masculine feminine demarcation that it is for us. So it,
absolutely.
it opens up a lot more subtleties of character.
I'll have to ask you to excuse the cat's tail in my face. I will try not to. Well done. Yeah. So as you had the trolls up as well, let's touch on them briefly before we start moving through the various things. And we've also got a couple of questions we've been sent. So the trolls, I love this artwork. It's my favorite thing. It's what I had as my background last time.
Unfinished, so it is.
Yes. So the trolls for me were a really difficult challenge because what's the thing trolls are famous for? Regeneration. Now, how do you add that mechanic into D&D or any role-playing game when a lot of the balance is around healing and having to have short rests and long rests? And then the other thing you have is that regeneration is dependent on not being injured with fire or acid. Now, fire is one of the most common magical damage types. So, on one side, you've got this creature that heals automatically. On the other side, you've got a creature that is incredibly vulnerable to a very common source of damage. Now, that was almost a blessing because it almost balanced itself out, but getting into the details of that and how much they regenerate and how, sorry, excuse me, a very persistent cat. Yeah, breaking it down into actually going into rounds of combat and what it would mean for their if you had a spellcaster, a healer, how would that work? Was fascinating for me. And you've also got the cultural aspects of it. If you've got a group that is severely damaged by fire, how would that affect their cooking? How would that affect how they heated their homes? How do they light their homes? Do they have torches on the walls? Well, probably not. It's a bit of a risk. So you've got this kind of culture that was almost automatically pushed to magic because you can have magical light without fire. And again, we'll get a bit more into that as we go down the list of creatures. But as they're up on the screen, I thought I'd mention them. But they are, as I said, I'm really pleased with how they've turned out. They've got a really important role within Oscarland society. So yeah, very pleased with them. And this that's on the screen that Evan's got up at the moment is the Francisca troll that is going to be part of the one shot you guys can access. Again, down here there is a QR code and a link to sign up to a mailing list and get the free one shot. The Francisca troll is one of the pre-generated characters that's in it. And they specialize in throwing axes, and they also have a pet that can collect them, which is great. So before we jump into the individual species, we've got questions. So we've got, does each species have the same culture across, or are there subsections, regional cultures? So it's a little bit of both. The culture across Oscana as a whole is relative. There are a lot of common threads that run through the whole place, regardless of the species, because they have spent so long working together. But at the same time, you have a lot of environmental differences to culture. You've got the dwarves and the goblins live in the mountains. You've got two different types. You've got the savanna troll and you've got the rainforest troll, same as the way we've got forest elves and savanna elves. So there are definitely cultural differences, but they're not cultural differences that cause problems. They are cultural differences that are embraced. And we've also got, so like our cities are, we have some cities that are, 90% dwarven, but we've also got cities on like the borders of species center points that are very, very mixed. So that then adds, you will blend the species culture into its own unique city culture. Which, I think is something quite unique to us. And there were some other.
I'd love to talk a little bit about the design of them, if you don't mind. And I can go on about this stuff forever. So shut me down, Rob, if I am getting too into the weeds. But one of the things that I try really hard to avoid for designing a lot of these species is I really want them to feel different. I want the differences in their cultures and their evolutions and everything to really come through in their visual design as well. And this for me makes for, more enjoyable play. When it gets to the point where every variety of species or race in the existing, D&D schemas, whenever they feel like just reskinned humans, it falls a little flat for me. And so I wanted to really embrace what to me is like the opposite of the Marvel effect. And it's not a dig on Marvel. It's a very deliberate, self-aware choice that they make. But there are a lot of alien species in the Marvel universe that are just people, but they're gold, or they're people, but they're blue. And that's the kind of thing I wanted to avoid. The internet is rife with art of half works that are gorgeous looking humans with green skin and tiny tiny tusks, and that's completely fine if that's how you choose to play it. That's entirely on you. That's a personal choice. This is in no way a value judgment against that choice, but I wanted this world to offer the opportunity for a little bit more pushing outside one's comfort zone if one chooses to embrace that.
Yeah.
So like for me, it's very much sorry, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to quickly interject with, like, I think that plays into that idea of this is an evolved world. So they are different because they have evolved differently. So yeah, I was just going to interject that.
Yeah, 100%. Like I want players to, if they choose to play a goblin, I want them to feel that they walk differently, that they eat differently, that they sit differently. I mean, if you notice here, like this is a lot of explorations of the goblinoid body type and how they would ambulate, how would their joints locomote, things like that. The kind of builds that they would have and how that would impact their ultimate design. I mean, this to me, I think a lot personally was fed into the idea of like this is a culture that lives inside mountains. They live in tunnels. They're naturally hunched. They are very very comfortable squatting in this way. They're built in this way. So maybe this is like a culture much like pre 20th century Japan where there aren't a lot of chairs. It's just not a part of their world.
Yeah.
They don't need them. They don't use them. Um, so it's little details like that that personally draw me in more, that allow for um, more interesting investment in some of these characters, and I really wanted to offer that to our players as well. So you'll see that with a lot of the species, they don't just stand up on two legs like your ordinary human. They'll appear to move differently, and I want you to feel that in their visual design. So that's very key for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we touched on it briefly last time in that we built those cultural packets for a
Hmm.
lot of these species, which so that told the writers, it told the artists, it told kind of everyone working on the project like what these various species had to work with. So that things weren't just kind of, oh, that would be cool, let's add it in. It was a real, okay, so the goblins are inside mountains. That would mean that they don't have that much sunlight. That would mean that, hearing would probably be more important than sight. That would mean, lots of different things. And then, what raw materials would they have to work with? Well, they'd have loads of stone and probably lots of metals. So that's when you've then got their mechanical natures come out. And I think we came up with the wingsuit idea for really quick travel around the mountains, and it all comes from their environment. Yeah. Right. So there were two other questions asked. Unfortunately, I'm not going to answer them yet because I don't want to reveal that much at the moment, Chris. However, we may be doing another AMA at some point, which touches on the religion aspect more. So you will be getting some more information about the religions and also potentially some of the rituals and stuff, which were what the questions were related to. So what I was going to do next was, how are we doing for time? Fine, we've got loads of time. I was going to go through a little bit more detail about each of the species we've got. So the first one, I'm just going to do it in alphabetical order, is the Corsairs. So the Corsairs are a species. They are pretty much human, or they were, but it is also a culture, and quite a defined group in this world. So the Corsairs are not only on Oscana. The seas of the Saltreach Isles are dangerous, not just because of the seas themselves, but what monsters and creatures are in them. There is a lot of danger. And when this kind of change came about, most people stopped traveling the seas. It was just too risky. But the humans, being the humans that we are, were the only ones brave / stupid enough to risk it. And over quite a long period, they learned how to deal with the specific dangers of the seas. So what you'll see in some of our future releases are the different groups of Corsairs that occupy the various parts of the world. However, the Corsairs for Oscana are the ones that have come here for various reasons, but have been affected by that calming influence of the gods. So, being a species that lives mainly on or by the sea, they have a swimming speed. They've also got sea legs, so a Corsair doesn't get seasick. And then what I wanted to do with the subspecies, you can choose to be a newly arrived Corsair, in which case your subspecies is none, and you can choose a feat, just like the variant human. Gives you that versatility. But if you want to play a Corsair that's come to Oscana in generations past, maybe their parents settled here, or maybe they've been here for generations. They may have settled in a Dragonborn city, in which case they get some of the draconic kind of heritage. They may have settled in a gnome place, in which case they are shorter and have a little bit of the gnome's intelligence. Or they may have settled in one of the troll cities, or have some troll blood in them, and they have a minor bit of regeneration. So you've got quite a lot of versatility in there that's very much linked to their history in Oscana. And so they did pose quite a few challenges. I think humans always do in a fantasy setting, because they're very easy to paint as boring and normal. And no, I don't think they are. If you look at humans as a animal species on Earth, we are the most effective endurance hunters that have ever existed. So there's a real balance to be found between humans are normal, which we know we're not, or making them too fantastical that they no longer appear human. So I think we've done that balance pretty well. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing some of the Corsairs that you work on, Evan, when you've got the influence from the mixed heritage coming in.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so. So yeah, the Corsairs, as I said, they will be major parts of some of our future releases. And in Oscana, they are those that have chosen to settle. So they have and they are still the only ones that will go and fish. They will travel the seas around Oscana. So they have some quite unique kind of a quite unique part in the world. Then we'll move on to the Dragonborn. Now, these are ones that are heavily influenced by Evan and his art. He gets one up. Sorry, that wasn't a dig. I was like, come on,
no,
Evan,
it's all
where
right.
is it?
I'm very slow. I'm moving very slow today.
I think these are fantastic. I like that our Dragonborn are not the big, bulky, stocky Dragonborn that we're used to. I think this kind of lithe, very agile Dragonborn is really cool. In Oscana, the Dragonborn are dealing with I'm going to forget the name of it now. They deal with constant waves of enemies from the sea, and these are like a swarm of smaller sea creatures that come upon their shores regularly. And so they, out of all of the species, are very military, very regimented. They have that training. They tend to take on positions of guards or personal protection. And we've also got them so that we don't tend to have, although you can have them, there are lots of mixed color Dragonborn because of the interbreeding that's happened over the years. There is no reason in Oscana for the Dragonborn to stay in any kind of caste system, which is what they're traditionally in. So we've removed that completely. So you get some, rather than choosing one color when you make your character, you can choose what type of breath weapon you have, and you can also choose separately what kind of resistance to damage you have. And they're tables, so if you want to roll it, you can, but of course you can choose. And we've also added some subspecies. So we've got coastal Dragonborn that are the ones on the northern edge of the island. They have a swimming speed. These are the ones, the first defense against this swarm. And then as you get further south into their country, or not country, sorry, as you get further into their kind of area, you've got the deciduous Dragonborn, who are more dexterous. They're used to living in the deciduous forests of that area. And I think they are the species on Oscana that work probably the most similar to traditional Dragonborn, but they've got this new look. They've probably got the most responsibility on the island. And I really like that about them, that kind of sense of duty that they have.
Yeah, and they're a great example of exactly what I was discussing before. I didn't want them to feel like people in a dragon suit or humans wearing a dragon head. I wanted them to feel more lizard-like. And you can see earlier in this time lapse me kind of working through some of their body mechanics, and it's almost like chicken-like. And this isn't this is the first Dragonborn we've drawn, so this is less of a character design and more of a how's this character going to be posed and how is she going to be how's her body form going to be communicated. But I do think it indicates, this does not look like a human being in a costume, and that's again very much the goal for a lot of these design decisions.
Yeah. So we've then got, we'll touch back on the dwarves briefly because we did talk a little bit about them earlier. Again, dwarves are let's say, a touchy subject because they are so established. It's like dwarves and elves. They are changing dwarves and elves too much is hard to do because when you say to a fantasy fan dwarf, they instantly get an image of a dwarf in their mind. So what we decided to do with these guys was, from a mechanics point of view, we kept the base dwarf the same as you would be used to from D&D. If you then look at their subspecies, we've got dwarves of the peak and lowland dwarves. So again, they're affected by where they have evolved and kind of the environment that they're in. So we've got sorry, I've put things backwards in my document. So you've got the dwarves of the peak. So these are the guys who live in the mountains. These are much more your traditional dwarves. You know, they have things like Master Crafter, which gives them some tool proficiencies. You've got proficiency in the survival skill as well. So these guys are dwarves, crafters, good in the mines. You know, what you would expect from a dwarf. And then you've got the lowland dwarves. So these guys, instead of living underground and mining through the mountains, these guys live on top of the hills. And this means that kind of endurance and kind of being aware of your surroundings and being able to find stuff was much more important to them. So they've got investigation as one of their skills, and it's also much harder for them to become exhausted. And this gives a small difference between them, but it's enough to vary them. And I think their culture is, so we've had them, their mountains are full of the more precious metals. So the dwarves have the gold, the silver, and the kind of the fine kind of jewelry making metals. So they are less of the sword making kind of big, hard, iron making dwarves. They are much more intricate with what they make. And that's one of the things, like, you'll see when we get down to the orcs, that the orcs import a lot of dwarven jewelry because it's a sign of wealth, and the orcs are, a lot of their culture is to do with showing your wealth. And I think Evan will talk a bit about how we decided to design the two different ones, because we've gone for quite, as you can see, they're quite a much broader kind of stouter dwarf with no neck, which I think is great.
That's right. So we do have, I wanted them to feel very different bodily speaking. So you've got the dwarves that live in the mountains. They tend to be much broader, shorter, built for mining, built for excavating, built for these enclosed spaces. And then, of course, you have the lowland dwarves, where that's much less the case. They have much longer trapezius muscles, so they actually have necks. They're built quite differently. They're not nearly as broad. In fact, their body shapes end up feeling quite a bit more triangular. They're very grounded. They're very sturdy, but they're not quite this square shape, this almost cartoonishly square shape of your classic mountain dwarf.
Absolutely. Yeah, so moving on to the elves. Now, again, Evan and I talked quite a lot about these guys. We really wanted the elves to feel different. And as you can see there, I think we've managed it. There is an alienness to them that I think is fantastic. Um, so we've got the field elves. So these guys are used to living in grassland. Now it's the only grassland on the island, in fact. Um, the rest of the kind of that kind of terrain is savanna. Um, so we've got the field elves who live to about 500 years old. They are skilled with either nature or animal handling to suit that kind of grassland feel. Um, and they're very in tune with the land. So they've got some, without giving up too much information about them, um, they have some kind of leanings towards druids in them. Um, and then we've got, so all down the eastern coast of Ascana, you've got dense rainforest. So you've got the forest elves in there who live for much longer. They live up to 800 years. And they have this really nice, I was quite pleased when I came up with this. When they are born, a seed is planted for them. And as they grow, uh, the tree grows. And when they become old enough to look after it, that is their duty through their life. Now they can leave, but they always come back if they can before they die, and they kind of die by being pulled into the tree and becoming part of it, which I really liked. Um, so then the forest elves have climbing abilities because they are used to going up and down the trees. They have so the whole elven species in this setting have a real kind of skill for song and dance, and they're a very agile. They're a mixture of graceful, but they're also quite reserved in it. So like more like ballet dancing rather than kind of wild party. Which I think actually the pose that you've got that elf there in is quite reminiscent of that.
Yeah, that's definitely the idea. Between the elves, I'd say that the forest elves that we have planned actually look slightly more on the alien side, but they both are meant to feel like a distinct species. And in this case, this is actually an image to be used for one of our subclasses. So it's not meant to be exactly species focused, but this is an elf. This is an elf, and I still want that as well as the implication behind what that carries with it to translate in the image. And so
Mm,
this is a wizard character, a wizard subclass, but because they're an elf and by nature of their subclass, I wanted a lot of that litheness, that's, as Rob said, balletic athleticism to communicate through in how they cast, in the nature of their casting. And ultimately I think it was successful in that. And I'm very happy with how this guy
absolutely.
turned out.
Yeah. And also going back to the one shot, this is one of the art pieces for one of the pre-gen characters. And if you've just joined us, we are giving away that one shot today. So, well, it will be available after today as well. So if you look in the bottom corner down here, you should see a QR code and a link. If you follow them and sign up to our email list, then you will get emailed out a one shot, and we'll be talking more detail about that one shot once we've gone through the rest of the species. But it's Halloween themed. It's got some great art. It's got a great plot written by Chris McCauley. It's just a lot of fun. So we're really excited to get that out. So where are we going to next? We've got the gnomes. Gnomes for me have always been a little bit cute, and I didn't want them to be cute. I wanted them to be their own species, stand on their own 2 feet, and have a culture that is as all encompassing as all of the rest. And so we tied their So I've just got a message saying I'm pointing at the wrong place for the QR code. It's there, apparently. My apologies. So yeah, we've tied there. So in geographically speaking, they are next to the dwarves. So they have quite a lot of the same culture. So they share a lot of trade with the dwarves. They share quite a lot with their outlook on the world on the dwarves, but they've got 3 quite specific subspecies. So we've got the tinker gnomes. So these guys are the dexterous crafters. So they've got tool proficiencies, including Scrimshaw's tools, which was a nice introduction, I think. Then you've got the arcane meddler gnomes. So these are tinkerers, but with magic. And then you've got the spelunker gnomes, who are the ones who go down into their ground and do their mining. And I think with these 3 kind of quite specialized subspecies, it opens up what the gnomes are for me. It gives them a real purpose and direction, which, and this may just be me, my personal interpretation of traditional gnomes, but I feel like they've lacked that in the past. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with how we've brought them about. They are the other side to the dwarven craftsmanship. So the dwarves are making the jewelry and that kind of ornate finery. The gnomes are making the interesting mechanical objects. And getting into trouble because they are far too curious. And I believe this is Embroglio, who is going to be one of the characters on our stream that is coming up. I believe, and I'm going to be corrected on this, I'm sure, but I believe the first part of our stream is coming out on the 8th of November. So yeah, please do come and watch that. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm playing one of the characters, and we've got a really good cast there. And this is another one of our gnome. This is the gnome coalescent. And the coalescent, I think you remember from last time, if you're watching, is the new class that we're bringing in. Anything to add on the gnomes, Evan?
I love gnomes. I love the small folk halflings gnomes. They're really fun to work with, and they also call for a lot of subtlety in terms of making them distinct, designing them distinctly. So I really like that challenge. it's really easy to confuse a gnome and a halfling, and at that point, I want them to similarly feel distinct and different
Yeah.
culturally, visually, evolutionarily. So that's been a fun challenge to contend with.
Yeah. And I think, I would say like they are one of the challenges with writing a setting is putting aside your own prejudices towards them, because like I don't particularly like playing gnomes, so I found them quite hard to work with, but it's knowing how to give them enough depth and enough kind of character that they can be taken and they can be used however the players want them to be used.
Yeah, and frankly, I think that these two gnomes that we've shown demonstrate a pretty nice variety of type, I suppose. You mentioned that gnomes are often cute, and I'd
Mhm.
say this gnome here definitely leans in that direction, whereas Ambrolio is definitely a,
Hard.
a horse of a different color. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's a lot more self-serious, and I think that comes through.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, so that's the similar range of character that I hope to be able to communicate across
Mm,
all of our artwork.
absolutely. So we're now going to get to the goblins, and as we've already said, I love the goblins. So there were some design aspects of the goblins which were quite easy. So like that they have dark vision is a no-brainer. These guys live inside a mountain. They're going to develop dark vision. But then, we were talking about, you know, for me, the culture was so important with them because we are really trying to pull away from that monstrous raider kind of stereotype that they're given all the time. So one of the things I quite liked was we've got cooks and crafters. So part of the goblin culture is that when you come of age, you get a set of cook's tools, and that cook's tool is important to you. It is your, like when we get christening presents, or I'm going to show my ignorance here, but other cultures, when you come of age, we wanted to give them something that was purely like purely cultural. And so you get bonuses when you're using that particular one, which I really like. I think it gives them it gives me a lovely image of this group of goblins sitting around a campfire in this cave at the end of a day, kind of telling stories and all kind of helping to cook this communal meal. It's just a lovely image in my head. In fact, that's an image I might add to your vast workload, Evan. They get in the book.
Yep. On it.
Sorry. um, and yeah, I think the goblins also have this. They're fearless, so they don't get the frightened condition because they're so used to being in these dangerous situations, and they're so used to having the support of their culture around them and the support of their friends and family around them, that it's not easy to scare them because they know that they'll probably be all right, not only because they'll be physically safe but also because they'll be emotionally safe. And I think that's something that is overlooked in games quite a lot, and I'm really pleased that we went there. And I also really like that we lent into the bat-like features. I think they look really interesting. Excuse me. You got anything to add on the goblins? I know we spoke about them earlier a bit.
I'm a big fan of them as well. I mean, a lot of thought went into their design. As you saw from, or you maybe saw from a glimpse of some of the earlier snapshots from design docs. Everything from like the pachydermic nature of their knuckle joints to the thick to thin of their forearms to help tie them into the larger goblin or the larger greenskins, orcs and trolls, and things like that. But as Rob said, the bat-like features were a real fun one, and that actually didn't come from me. That came from another artist that we were working with, Cherry Luna, who really honed in on things like the bat-like ears, the bat-like nose, and the best part for me is definitely those two front teeth.
Yeah,
those two front teeth that add so much possibility to any goblin design from here on out. So for the rest of my life, goblins will have these two front teeth.
brilliant.
Yep.
I think they're actually the species that took the longest in kind of the early stages, weren't they? It was really a lovely kind of communal conversation that we had about them. It was a lot of fun. So moving on to the halflings, again another hard one because everybody knows what a halfling is, and everyone knows 4 very specific halflings, and that can make it quite a difficult design challenge because that's what people expect or want. And so again, trying to move away from that, you have to do it quite carefully, and it's a fun challenge. They are so ingrained in fantasy culture that kind of bringing them into something new is risky, but it's also exciting. And I think one of the things that sums up our halflings is a saying that they have, which is, with wide eyes and open minds. And that really describes their outlook, is they want to experience, they want to explore, and they do a lot of the kind of management of the island. So they are either farmers who farm great swathes of land and get lost in the minutiae of detail, or they are doing a very similar thing in the cities. Like a lot of halflings have positions in the bureaucracy of the island, and this is because they relish it. They relish the challenge. They relish the learning opportunities. So we've actually got 3 subspecies. So we've got the rural, as I said, the urban, as I said, and then we've also got those that don't want either of those 2 positions become vagabond halflings. And this is not seen as any kind of negative. They have wanderlust. So they travel Ascana, they travel the roads, which are dangerous, and they kind of become these traveling kind of, that the barkeeper kind of stereotype of, I'm here to listen to your stories. They have that, but for travelers on the road. And I just think it gives all 3 of these subspecies do quite different things, but they all tie back into with wide eyes and open minds. And they're, I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful phrase. And I think it has ties back to what people expect from the halflings, but it also lets us develop them in our own direction, and I'm quite pleased with that.
Yeah, I like to think of the vagabond halflings as like the folk heroes of the road.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately don't have art of them to ready to show, or that I'm happy with to show. But I am happy with some of the design decisions that have been made up to this point, and some of the influences that they're going to be pulling from. They're not going to look or feel like, Aragorn, as your classic ranger, like the vagabonds in this case. But also, obviously, they're halflings. I'm really trying to diversify the cultural influences that we're pulling from in their design, especially since one of the great aspects of the halflings in Ascana is how adaptive they are
Yeah,
to other cultures. When they are immersed in other cultures, they're among the first early adopters, if you will, of other species cultural influences. And so I want that to reflect in their design as well.
absolutely. And now we're on to my favorite, the orcs. I've always loved orcs. Ever since I was little, my first army was orcs. I read endless books based around them. I just don't know what it is about them. They just fascinate me. Um, so again, like with the goblins, we really wanted to pull away from this monstrous evil. They're not evil. They are they they enjoy tests of strength and tests of what's the word I'm looking for? They you move up in orc culture by fighting for that place, and this is not a negative thing for them. This is the natural way that you would progress, but they understand that the other species don't do that, so that's fine. Like, they don't try and progress in the other places outside of their own cities in that manner. um and there are many orcs that do go off and will say go to one of the dwarven cities, and they will progress through the dwarven way of progressing, because that's what you do there. So we've given them that option. And they've also got, as I said, like, really pushing the culture. So they've got massive salt flats in the area that they mainly inhabit. So this has made them very rich, because everyone needs salt for their food. So they have a
Or
lot of,
survival in the case of the rainforest biomes.
yes. Um, so they've got a lot of wealth to go around, which means, as you can see, they wear a lot of jewelry. They take quite a lot of pride in their imports, and they wear a lot of kind of bright colors because they're paying for dyes from various parts of Toscana. And they've got two subspecies. So you've got the Mazak orc on the left,
This guy.
and you've got the Hugi orc down there. And rather than being kind of opposed to each other, these guys tend to, once you rise to a position of power as a Mazak orc, you tend to have a Hugi orc working with you in partnership, because one is the side that does the fighting and holds the respect and the awe of the other orcs, and the Hugi orc is the one who does a lot of the I don't want to say scheming, but a lot of the planning.
Administration.
Yeah, that's a better word. Thank you. But also, we haven't kind of forced them into those roles. A Hugi orc is more than capable of fighting for a position if they wish to, and a Mazak orc is more than capable of thinking for itself and working their way up without fighting for it. And that kind of shows itself in their subspecies abilities. So we've got the Mazaks get you get to use your reaction to basically make an attack of opportunity if you are hit by a melee attack. And they also get bonuses to their unarmed strike. So you've got the option and the opportunity to use your strength to fight. And that is how they move up in their society. But they have a whole lot of culture around that. It is not all that they are. Also, as you've got him up, this is one of my favorite pictures. This is one of the orcs who runs the city of Lazon, which is on that salt flat, and is, obviously because of that, incredibly rich. His name is Tarfu, and if you back our Kickstarter, you will be learning quite a lot about him and hearing from him quite a few times as well.
He was super fun for me to do, and I've had a lot of fun in general with the orcs. In that, as you saw with the one of these variants of orc is pretty classic looking. He's bald. He's kind of brutish. I definitely did try to communicate that there's more there. Obviously, he's very prideful of things like his jewelry, his garments. There's a lot more than just a mindless brute or a prop for adventurers to kill. Yeah. But he still feels, pretty much like a classic orc. With the Hugi, it was an opportunity to really move away from that. And so they're often, first of all, they're comparatively diminutive. And that has a lot of history to it between the two subspecies of orcs. But they're, I'd say, a little bit closer to humans in build. But there's a lot more that we're able to push in terms of their design and communicating that, again, quote unquote, not scheming aspect of their character traits. And one of the most fun things for me has been exploring these unconventional orc characters like Torfu. As we saw, he definitely stands out from a crowd. Yeah. But also the big bad evil guy of our upcoming one shot, yeah, is a Hugi orc, and so getting to explore. So, this is a Hugi orc with some additional aspects to them that I'm sure you'll find out if you go in for the one shot. But yes, getting to experiment with meshing that with the design of an orc and make that work and make that communicate everything that it needs to was a really fun design challenge, and yeah, something that I think I walked away learning a lot from. Yeah, I think that's it's such an interesting image, that and as Evan says, you will find out a lot more if you do follow the QR code down here. I think I've got the right side of the screen this time, or the link down there. And if you join our mailing list, you will get this free one shot. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how that image came out, and I think it does even like the way the hands are held it's just wonderful in a really creepy kind of almost spider-like way, which I'm terrified of. So does a good job of creeping me out, that one. One thing I was going to mention as well is something about the Hugi orcs. Both of their subspecies abilities are about communication. So they're about de-escalation. They're about kind of using their wits to deal with situations. Yeah, I'm pleased with that.
Right, we've got two more to go through before we get to going into detail about the one shot. Let's look how we're doing for time. Not bad. So the tieflings. Now, tieflings are, I'm going to get some gasps at this point, are not my favorite species. So I found them quite difficult to write. So I ended up not writing them. I ended up handing them to a different writer. And what we came back with, and we had a few conversations about it, I am actually really pleased with. So we've got them as they are the only species on Oscana that didn't evolve here. They had an exodus from the east and they came to Oscana and they were accepted into society by the other species. And they live on a couple of the islands just off the south and east coast. And they have a very, so they're also the only species that doesn't have a city. So they don't they live in smaller communities. So let me just get something up. And because they came as they were fleeing war basically when they came. So they already had this we don't want to be involved in any kind of violence. We're looking for a place that we can call home and settle and be peaceful. And then they found Oscana, which was more than happy with that. And so they've become this they're about letting people atone. They're about forgiveness. And we've removed the hellish aspect from them, which I always felt pigeonholed them a bit much. So they have just, wherever they came from, they've evolved like this, but it's not because of any kind of infernal or demonic or devilish influence. They are just an evolved species like any other. So we've given them, they still have fire resistance. Hang on, I'm looking at the wrong document. They have resistance to one type of damage from fire, cold, poison, necrotic, or thunder. So that gives you, it gives you many more choices when you're creating a character. You can, because you can tie character traits or personality into each one of those. And what they've also got is instead of the set cantrip and spells that they get, they've got tables that you can choose from. So again, you can really make them individual. You can make them absolutely be the character that you want them to be without having to push it into that box of there's some hellish influence in them. From a design point of view, Evan, what are you going for with
them? My biggest gripe with tieflings is the internet has made them all thirst traps. And that again, not a value judgment. If that's how one wants to play, go for it. You play you.
Yeah.
But as the representation of that species in this world, I really wanted something more. And so that's something that I'm trying to push very hard away from. It's actually quite difficult because they are so recognizable, and so their design is so recognizable. But we are experimenting with different different aspects of tiefling design in order to make them appear different and appeal differently. And actually, this individual is not a very unique looking tiefling, in my personal opinion. But some of the things that we are experimenting with are the nature and variety of the horn emanations from the head, where
Yeah.
they're coming from, front, back, side, whether they lean more towards goat, which is, goat or ruminant is pretty common, especially with the infernal hellish association, or more towards bovine, or even more towards something like deer and elk without going full on antler. So there's a lot of variety that we're exploring in their visual design, and I'm excited to see where we land on that and how they turn out.
Yeah, they're one of the ones we're going working on at the moment, aren't they? So we've got some really nice kind of variations coming in. Um, I'm I'm really hopeful for them in our setting. I think we've done a good job of keeping them recognizable, but also giving them kind of like a new lease of life. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the artists come up with.
That's the goal. With that, Rob, I'm afraid I actually have to duck out, but
That's
so
fun.
you'll be on the last one on your own. But
That's
it was
absolutely
great
fun.
getting to weigh in on some of this stuff, and I'll look forward to the next one.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much, Evan. We're going on to trolls now, so we've seen them slightly already, so that's fun. Thanks very much, dude.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. So yeah, as I said, we've got the trolls next, and again, I love these guys. They're really cool. We've got so they are big, broad. They've got horns. They have regeneration. They're vulnerable to fire. They live a very long time because of this regeneration, which has made them very wise. They are slow to do things because they spend a long time working out whether that is a thing they should do. So they have, just close the window. They have extra wisdom. They've got average lifespan of about 600 years. As you said, yeah, I spoke a little bit about the regeneration earlier. They've got two subspecies. So you've got, so Oscana is like a horseshoe, and the main troll kind of areas are the end of each arc. So you've got, let me get this right way. On the southern one, you've got the Savannah trolls. So these guys have a sprint, so they've got extra movement, and the trolls already have quite a big movement. So they're very fast, and they've also got dash as a free action once per short rest. So they are absolutely like sprint hunters, basically. And they're obviously really good at tracking because of tracking creatures through the savannah. We've then got the rainforest trolls. So these guys can climb, and they've got camouflage as well. So if they're kind of in any kind of wooded area, you can use that to hide or help you make the stealth checks. The trolls have been an interesting thing to develop because originally I wanted to make them a large playable species. Now we've ended up having to pull that back because it interferes with so many rules that it's just not possible without rewriting a lot of the rules. So what we've decided to do is they're medium, but we're going to release a large playable species expansion, basically, that's going to have 5, 6, maybe more large species, and with explanations of how to deal with the various rules that need changing when you've got a large playable species. So I'm really looking forward to writing that, and we'll have we'll have the large trolls in that. And yeah, from a culture side of things as well, they are very far removed from they've got a cave troll. They are not brutish at all. They're a very kind of thoughtful, measured species. I'm incredibly excited to play one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. There is one in the one shot, which I'm now going to talk about. So, for those of you that weren't here at the start, we have written a one shot with the help of Chris McCauley and one of our writers, Nell Quinn Gibney. It's Halloween themed because that's the time of year. It takes place in the dwarven capital of Tamundashol. It takes place quite a few years in the past. We've got some fantastic artwork, as always, from Evan. The image behind me is the front cover. We've got 3 combats in it, and then the boss fight. You have the chance to... it's not a completely linear story, so there are some choices that matter in it. They've been written really well. We've got some really, really nice maps designed by our graphic design lead, Katie. We're really excited to show this to you. It's our first outing of some of our species and classes and subclasses. So you'll be able to choose from, there is a gnome coalescent in it, which is our brand new class. And you've got kind of like a cheat sheet explaining all of the abilities. So you've got enough information to play it. There's going to be... so the character sheets we've got in it have space for you guys to put your own name on the characters and kind of flesh them out a little bit. We've also got, so we've got the gnome coalescent, we've got a shield mage, elven shield mage, who is all about the shield spell and shield of faith. We've got a my mind has gone blank. So yeah, sorry. We've got a Dharmacaris, who is a double sword wielding subclass of fighter. They give you a lot of benefits against armored opponents. We've also got the Circle of the City Druid. These guys have specializations in a urban environment. They also have a pet Enfield, which if you are on our Patreon, you will have seen already. But the Enfield is a kind of like a chimera of a fox with eagle wings, and they're really cool. And Circle of the City kind of gives you one that improves as you level up. And yeah, it's a really fun little one shot. It is going to be played on a couple of podcasts in the next few weeks, so keep your eye out for them. As I said, we've got there will be coming out in a separate update for it as well. We'll have a voiceover done of the introduction that you can play to your players. There will also be all of the character art that will be coming out. And we are potentially going to be adding a few other bits over the next couple of weeks to it. If you want to give it a go, then down here is a QR code and a link where you can sign up to our mailing list, and you'll be sent it pretty much instantly. Also, being on that mailing list will get you any updates that we make. It will give you kind of information about our Kickstarter, our Patreon, when the stream's coming out, basically keep you up to date with everything that we're doing. We also, as I said earlier, we've got our stream starting on November the 8th. We've got a 4-part kind of character introduction where the characters are going to meet each other and kind of you'll get to know who everyone is. And then starting in December, we will be moving on with a full campaign that is set in Oscana. The Kickstarter is going to be launching mid-December. So that's going to be really cool. We've got the book, we've got a premium book, dice, we've got this beautiful canvas maps coming with it. We've got I think we're at 3 to 4 hours of original music that's been produced for it. So we've got music for each of the different species and the biomes. We've got some of the cities have their own themes, and we've got some combat music and some specific boss battle music for some of the high CR monsters in the book. There's going to be decks of cards, so over 50 monsters, over 50 items, and cards for spells and feats. We are also doing another AMA in 2 weeks' time. So please do submit questions for that. Oh, I've got a question coming in from Guy. He's asking where in Oscana the one shot is set. That's a very good question. It is set in the city of Tumundashol, which is the dwarven capital. So it's situated like high up on a mountain, and it is built up above the mountain, but also dug into it. It's a very, so they follow the god Mashanga. It's a very, the religion is very focused around kind of production and smithing, as you would expect for the dwarves. It's a very beautiful city. You've got a river running through it down the mountain. There's a lot of kind of very beautiful carving there. It's a really nice setting for an adventure. You'll also be going into the Church of Mashanga during the one shot, so you'll get to see some really cool maps of that. So thanks for that question, Guy. Right, I've still got 25 minutes left and I've talked about everything. So if you do have any questions, please do send them in and I will talk about them. But for now, let's see something else. I'm going to start talking about some of our subclasses because they are really interesting. Let's pick a couple of my favorites. Let's go for the medic. I like the medic. So this is a fighter subclass that we've got. So for me, it always felt like something that was missing. If you've got fighters, some of them are going to learn how to bandage a wound. Some of them are going to learn how to treat wounds when there's not a potion. 50 gold is a lot of money. Not everyone can afford to buy a potion, and not everyone wants to spend their money on that. Lots of people would rather not buy potions and save up for that fancy sword. So it made sense to me that there would be fighters, like non-magic medical people. So what we did is we took the healers kits and we basically let the medic boost them. So they use their medicine skill to heal. And you're limited to how many uses of the healer's kit you can use. So it's not too overpowering. And as you level up, you get, so you're able to help others with their death saving throws. So that should stop members of your party dying. Having lost two of my favorite characters recently, I am very in favor of that. They also, at higher levels, are able to warn others in combat. Their ability to look around the field and assess what's going on becomes an important factor. So they can give allies advantage on saving throws. And they also, at their highest subclass level, they get the ability to move faster across the battlefield. So they're very versatile because you've still got all of the combat parts from being a fighter. So you've still got your extra attacks, you've still got your indomitable, you still got your second wind, and come on, my brain. Action surge, there we go. So that, it does become you have to manage your movement around the battlefield quite a lot. So you have to make sure you can get to the people that need healing while also being able to fight. But I'm very pleased with them. It's a very versatile fighter class. It gives them a lot of scope. Also, you get, if you're healing someone and there's an enemy within 5 feet of you, you get an attack of opportunity against you. So it is not as simple as spell healing. You do become vulnerable while you're doing it. But yeah, I think they fill a niche, and I think the problem with healing in tabletop games, because it becomes the only thing you do, and I think that can be one of the things that puts people off from it. So I think this deals pretty well with that issue. As I said, you will see more of them if you back the Kickstarter. Let's go through. So the Dermakiris is in the one shot. So these are the guys who've got so they either use short swords or scimitars, and they dual wield them. So when I was looking into dual wielding in general, it really doesn't, and hasn't existed in this world much. There are very few reports of any soldiers dual wielding. This is because it's really hard to do. And most of the time you're better off with a shield than you are another sword. But there were tales, a few tales, maybe 3 or 4 I found, of various troops that did dual wield, and the Dharmakiras were one of them. They were a gladiator class in Rome. So that's where I've taken the inspiration from. So one of the things they're good at is fighting multiple foes. So they get extra reactions. So if they have people coming in and out of their range, they can have multiple attacks of opportunity in a round. You're also very good at spreading your attacks. So you get several bonuses if you attack. So if you've got 2 attacks and you attack 2 different people, you get a benefit to that. You may be able to reduce their speed when they move away from you. You also have the parry ability. So that ups your AC a little bit. And you can also reduce the 1 attack roll against you. So one of the things historically that they were good at was taking on armored opponents. So I've tried to push that into it as well. So as you go up in the levels, you've got you crit targets with armor easier than you do unarmored targets, and also enemies do not benefit from a shield. So one of the questions that was raised for that was why don't they get this benefit against unarmored foes or foes with natural armor? And the answer for that was that it's about if you're unarmored, you're using your dexterity to put up your armor class. So you are ducking and weaving rather than taking a blow on your armor. So this class is about finding the weaknesses in armor so that when you hit, that's where you hit. And one of the things I really like about this subclass is when you hit level 18, you can attempt to use your 2 swords to sever parts of the body off. So you can try and remove head, leg, arms. Now, obviously this is quite difficult because you can potentially take out an entire enemy on the first round of combat. So it is hard to do. You have to use all of your attacks to do them. And once you've hit with that single attack that takes up all of your attack actions, you then have to make another check to see if you've managed to behead them or sever the arm or leg. I think it's a very nice high level ability. It's still going through play testing, but so far the reviews of it have been that it's a lot of fun to play. So I'm really excited, and I'm really looking forward to see what you guys think when you get your hands on it from the one shot. I was on 2 fighter ones now. Let's have a look what else we can go for. Let's go for, this is another one of my favorites, Path of Grief. So a barbarian subclass that is focused around sadness. So for me, this idea that rage is always anger, I think it's not correct. And I like the idea that, you know, people cry when they're angry, and they get angry when they're sad. You know, this is an area of kind of barbarians that I think should be explored. So the idea behind this subclass is that some great grief or great sadness has affected the barbarian to such a state that it comes out when they fight. So I'm actually playing one of these at the moment, and I've got a 78-year-old lady called Ethel, who, when her husband died, killed by monsters, and she has gone to avenge him. And she uses her sadness and her rage to do that. So you've got your unarmored defense as a barbarian is based on your charisma and your constitution rather than your dexterity and your constitution, because it's that well of kind of sadness and grief that is powering that ability to shirk off damage and harm. They get proficiency in insight because their experiences let them better know other people's experience. You've got the ability to, so when you rage, you kind of radiate that sadness out. And that affects creatures around you, friend and foe. So that's quite, it's quite a powerful ability, but you're going to be in the middle of combat. It's 20-foot circle. It's going to hit your allies as well. So it's balanced out by that. You also, as you level up, get some abilities against the creatures that caused your grief. So you can choose kind of like aberration speeds, contracts, etc. And you get some bonuses against them. You also have, like, your grief is very focused on them. So there's some penalties to if you don't attack those creatures and they are present. And when you get to it's level 14 for the barbarians, highest subclass ability, you basically take on the aspect of grief, so you become quite horrifying to look at, and this can do psychic damage to your enemies around you. Right, I've got 10 minutes left. I just realized that was really sad, so I'm going to pick one that's a little bit less sad. And let's go for let's do another one that's in the one shot that you guys are getting. So this is the shield mage. This was the elf that Evan put up earlier. So I really like this subclass. I think it's interesting. It adds a lot of, it pushes a wizard into the melee of combat without giving them benefits on attacking, but giving them quite a few benefits on defense. So you get, basically the shield spell is added to your spell book. You get a free use of it per long rest. You're also good at working out the timing of fights, so you can add or subtract your intelligence modifier from your initiative. So that lets you place yourself in a beneficial part of combat to better use the shield spell. When you reach higher levels, you can push out a pulse from your shield to damage foes around you. You also get, you are able to cast shield for free, sorry, without a spell slot once per short rest. You do get some better spells, but I'm not going to reveal them. I'll let you find them out. And then once you reach 14th level, you're the highest for the wizard. You get extra benefits to shield of faith and the other spells. It's a really interesting class to play. There are a lot of ways you can go with it. But yeah, as I said, because you've got that pulse that comes out of your shield, you can go into combat with it. Now, it's not quite the same way as with a Bladesinger. I think, you're not a melee class at all, but you can risk getting into combat more because you've got a higher AC, because of shield. You can also, should have mentioned this before, you gain proficiency with shields, and you may use one as a spell casting focus. So you are much better able to defend yourself, but you're attacking kind of, that's not improved in any way. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy with that, with the one shot that's coming out. So to recap, before I head off, we have a one shot for you. It is, if you follow the QR code or link down here, you'll be able to sign up to our mailing list and get access to it. We're intending to release a few more goodies for it over the next couple of weeks. It should do you well for a Halloween one shot. It would also work any other time. It is written by Chris McCauley and Nell Quinn Gibney. It is incredibly well laid out. It's got some really great maps with it. I've really been looking forward to playing it, so I am hopefully getting a chance in the next couple of days. If you want to watch it being played, keep an eye out on our social media, because we are going to be running it on a couple of podcasts and streams in the next month or so. It's also going out to quite a few places. So if you keep an eye on our social media, we will make sure to post where it's going to be played. You also, of course, get access to some of the stuff that's going to be in our Kickstarter. So you'll get access to quite a few of the species and sub classes, and of course the Coalescent. So I hope you guys have enjoyed hearing about the species. They are a lot of fun to write, species. It's great to build up a culture and kind of think about how they would all interact with each other. And it's been a real pleasure doing that. If you have any questions about that or anything else, please do send us a question. You can send them on any of our social media. If you are watching this in the coming weeks, then I hope you have enjoyed it. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. I'm not sure what we're talking about that time, but it will be posted up for you to know. I may go through some more of the subclasses, actually, although I don't want to give too many of them away. And yeah, so please do download the one shot. Please do follow us on all of our social media. Have a look at our Patreon. There's a really lovely comic that we've started putting up on it. which follows an Enfield that I mentioned earlier, the winged fox. That is currently free on the Patreon. We've got quite a lot of stuff on the free section, actually. We think it's really good value for money. So yeah, please do check it out. If you are looking for anything kind of to do with us, there is, yeah, you should be able to find it all through our Facebook page. We do have a website as well, goldmountaingames.com. And yeah, I think, although I'm 5 minutes early, I've run out of things to talk about. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much for watching, and I'm going to sign off. So thank you very much. Katie, I hope you've heard that. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting here in silence for